This happened to me in November of 2021, and it was a life-changing event. I am still struggling to comprehend the significance of that incredible event. Regrettably, my reaction was not what one would expect. It may have been more than just a vision. I can't say for sure. What I do know is that it was real. The fact that it was so painful to feel boundless joy and love and then be brought back to this material world was my primary impression for a long time. But today, with all the happening in the globe, I see how important it was to listen to the real message and make the necessary changes in my life. I have done just that. I didn't understand why God allowed this to happen to me until months later. It had nothing to do with my uniqueness. He used this example. Going to the principal's office as a student is typically not a positive thing. Principals put their faith in instructors to impart knowledge to pupils. God told me that many individuals had come into my life to teach me something, but I had been stubborn and disregarded their counsel. Because of this, he summoned me to his office. Additionally, he informed me that whenever he takes humans to the hereafter, which I have only ever heard of as the spirit realm, he usually makes sure they are comfortable and even anticipate being there. I could continue forever, but I feel compelled to just share my story and allow the reader to form their own opinions based on what they read. After a week in the hospital last October, I'll preface this by saying that I was aware it was a difficult period. My strength gradually dwindled, and I lay asleep for a few minutes on multiple occasions. Until recently, when a handful of doctors realized that 2 of my drugs were incompatible, they were unable to diagnose a problem with me. It was confirmed that a seizure was occurring as a result of their combination. Nobody saw this, though, when I first went to the hospital. After a week of testing, they decided to remove the lap band, a device I had used for weight loss surgery in the past, from my stomach. The anesthetic had taken effect. Complications delayed the treatment, which was originally scheduled to take 15 minutes. My stomach was now encased with the gadget. The removal of the gadget required a duration of 2 to 3 hours. Anesthesia has been a standard part of each of my surgeries throughout the years. Time seems to be slipping away from me. Even though I've never dreamed during surgery before, this feels like time travel. On this occasion, however, upon awakening, a vivid recollection of an event that was just as genuine as any other one was readily apparent. I had ever achieved before. My dreams frequently feature characters I have never met before and are completely illogical and weird. Upon awakening, I typically lose all recollection of it. When it comes to this event, though, I can recall practically every word that was said. After reflecting on the event for the past decade, I shall now recount it word by word. While they got the operating room ready, I was in a holding area, all dressed and ready to go. Feeling a bit worried, I had just signed a plethora of consent paperwork. I was prepared for this procedure since in the past, before putting me under, they would give me something to help me relax. I vaguely recall experiencing some embarrassment or remorse for anticipating that. I waited for a nurse to come and insert drugs into my intravenous line. Whatever it was, I felt a warm and fuzzy sensation as soon as the medicine took effect. Prior to the anesthesiologist placing the main mask over my lips and instructing me to count backwards from 100, there wasn't much. I believe I reached 99. Out of nowhere, I opened my eyes to find myself on the brink of a circular courtyard encircled by the most exquisite flowers and meticulously pruned plants. Big white fluffy clouds were evenly spaced, adding to the beauty of the sunny day. It seemed like it was close to 11 in the morning. It was a brilliant summer day of 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Large red tiles extended in all directions to form the courtyard's round surface. Little red cobblestone walkways led to other enormous circular yards, similar to the one I was in. After that, there were more courses that connected to various circular courtyards via which further pathways emerged. From what I could tell, this continued indefinitely. The picturesque hills seemed to stretch on ever. Red cobblestones lined every walkway, with neatly squared-off shrubs filling in the spaces. It was a breathtaking display of floral arrangements. There is just one word to describe the lovely aroma. I have no idea if it's still up, and I doubt many people will have been there. Nonetheless, the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas featured the most extraordinary indoor flower garden I had ever seen in its magnificent atrium during my most recent visit. Assuming it continued on indefinitely into the distance, it was enthralling to a certain extent. In between the flower beds and courtyards, you could see little steam spiderwebs, and you could cross the stream on any of the little red cobblestone paths that ended with a little arch bridge. Every aspect of the landscaping was spotless. The exquisiteness of it defies description, in my opinion. Finally, if you've ever gone to a highly exclusive golf course, like Augusta, that regularly hosts tournaments on the PGA Tour, you could have noticed similar landscaping, only magnified tenfold. But above all else, God's presence. My goodness, I am at a loss for words. Maybe if you relived your most formative peak experience and reflected on the profound sense of presence you've ever experienced. Sometimes I feel God's presence when I'm praying deeply, when I achieve that meditative level and my mind is still. I'm referring to the pinnacle of your spiritual journey. Imagine a presence so dense that it pervades everything and seems almost physical. Now multiply that feeling by 100. That's how intensely you felt God's presence. When someone is inches behind you in a full line, you can feel their love, serenity, and tranquility permeate your entire being. I was completely at ease. Nothing bothered me. Everything was perfect, and I was completely present. I possessed total mental and physical command. Even though I couldn't explain my entrance, I had a gut feeling that I was in a realm of the dead. It was as if I had returned home. Of course, I didn't see anything that indicated heaven, but was I really there? I had no idea. Heaven is something I've always wanted to experience, and what I was having would have exceeded my wildest dreams. The regal trio. As soon as I observed 3 men facing away from me, I quickly assessed the surrounding area and the energy levels. They could feel my presence now, and they were all facing me in the other direction. For some reason, I felt that I had taken them by surprise or that they weren't prepared for my arrival. I had my doubts, but then they all started smiling, and 2 of them seemed to be hurrying over to me. They were familiar to me. Justin, a long-lost acquaintance, was the first gentleman to arrive. He walked up to me, grinning ear to ear, and we just stood there silently. Yet love was exchanged in a way that was not entirely one-sided. He could tell I was happy to see him, and I could tell he was too. There was an innate sense that there was no room for idle chatter. Once again, there was an energy exchange of some kind, and all was understood. It was extremely similar to the way men nod their heads to show respect, but on a far deeper and more satisfying level. An old acquaintance, Gary, was among the gentlemen that emerged from behind Justin. Gary and I hadn't seen one other for a long time, too. As usual, he was donning this crazy Simpson tee. For some reason, I've always had the impression that Gary's sense of style was frozen at around the 10-year-old mark. As he got closer, I went through the exact same thing. Again, no words were uttered as he grinned from cheek to cheek. I could tell, though, that he was happy to see me. He loved me deeply, and I foolishly believed that I had returned his feelings. I was aware that Justin had passed away at an early age, maybe over 20 years ago. Years later, I reconnected with an old acquaintance from high school, only to find out that Justin had been in a fatal drunk driving accident. We had lost touch with our gang back then. Tragically, a drunk driver swerved into his lane as they were merging onto a 2-lane road, leading to a head-on collision that killed them both in an instant. It was awful, and everyone else was there for the burial except me, but I honestly don't recall anything like that. In my early 20s, Gary just stopped communicating with me. It was common to make decisions in life that would cause you to never see some individuals again in the pre-social media era. I went over to greet the last person, and he did the same. Even though I initially failed to recognize him, he was also beaming. As we met eye to eye, I finally recognized him as an elderly guy from my youth, Mr. Shepard, my beloved 5th-grade teacher. Up until this, nothing had truly shocked me, despite everything that had happened. Seeing Mr. Shepard brought me much joy. Personality traits are something I've always struggled to put into words. From what I could gather, Mr. Shepard gave off the vibe of the most amiable elderly gentleman you could hope to meet. To me, he always resembled either the KFC Colonel or the Orville Redenbacher Popcorn Man. When I was 10 years old in 1985, I thought Mr. Shepard was 75 years old. However, in all honesty, he was probably between 55 and 60. Surely, he was nearing the end of his tenure as a teacher. Like my previous 2 pals, Mr. Shepard and I had an energetic exchange, but this time I felt like he would be my guide. Since we both knew that this was a learning opportunity, I refrained from speaking to him until the very end. To me, it was a lot like a parent taking his kid hunting for the first time. Evidently, I was completely unprepared. Upon realizing that Justin and Gary were no longer with us, Mr. Shepard and I started to walk side by side down one of the narrower routes, crossing a tiny bridge. Despite his remarks about how much he has liked seeing my life develop, it seemed like I was having a tough time of it. Somehow, I was worried about losing my phone, so I reached for my pocket. Oh, I got this overwhelming sense of physicality and the ability to touch everything, even though I never actually reached out to touch a flower or anything like that. Forgot to say that I was wearing my go-to loungewear, a pair of baggy athletic shorts and an enormous gray t-shirt, when I know for sure that no one will be dropping by. That was nearly a year ago, and I no longer own that t-shirt. Now I will reveal the primary message that God desires me to impart. He wants it sent to me without my judgment on the message's importance. Much of this message is deeply private and clearly intended only for me. Sharing it was never my intention or desire. But it's not up to me to judge whether or not my knowledge and experience will be a blessing to anyone. I merely follow orders. Up until today, I have neglected to jot down a single word. There is an implicit and natural understanding in this experience that these instructions and message are from God. Mr. Shepard is just a guide and messenger. I will not make any further comments after this. The presence of God becomes incredibly evident while Mr. Shepard is sharing this information with me, and it is crucial that anyone reading this understands this. I hope my vocabulary could do it justice. As I groped around in search of my phone, I couldn't help but wonder why I would be so worried about it at this moment. I am constantly worried about being without my phone because of my excessive obsession with it. Mr. Shepard made fun of me and claimed I had no money on me. According to him, he also doesn't have any money on him. He continued by saying that the figure I was perceiving was completely fictitious. It was an image made to make me feel better, but in the hereafter, they served no use. Then he gave me an account of hell. Even God's light could not shine through the depths of hell. It was as if the light of God had vanished into thin air. Someone once told me that there was a thin veil separating the spiritual world from the material one. The departed who now dwell in the afterlife may perceive us clearly. They watch over us constantly. They know when to be vigilant and when to let their guard down. While it's normal to feel sad at times, there's no need to wallow in sorrow if that's not what you want. Following this, Mr. Shepard starts to inform me on what's about to happen. According to him, TOID is only the first wave. They warned me that our ignorance of the harm we were causing the Earth would have a bad impact on our lives down the road. Something major is about to happen. A lot of people will be confused, and a lot of people will suffer. As evil spreads across the planet, the powers of darkness perceive a chance to expand their influence. They are tired of being limited to their dark domain and would like to expand their dominion. At that moment, a map of our planet with different areas of darkness and light was given to me. There were no borders or markers, and it was not orientated like our maps, so I could not make out much. Something about it seemed holographic, maybe even four-dimensional, or at least incomprehensible to my brain. An epic showdown is imminent as Satan and his armies prepare for combat. Christians should not go out and buy weapons at this time. During this season, Christians should show mercy and love to one another. It is acceptable if one needs to protect himself, but just because our world has evolved doesn't mean that people should act differently. Those who give in to barbarism will not receive blessings. Keeping food and medicine on hand is a good idea. Getting a generator is a smart move. A day would arrive when trade would completely dry up. There would be complete anarchy throughout this period. There would be no Christians at that time if they did not have a genuine love for Jesus. It is God's desire that all Christians would actively participate in the life of their church. He is urging people to reassess their faith leaders with an open mind. Preaching should be based on the Bible and not on the speaker's personal views. We are to refrain from false preaching. God desires a shift in how Christians are perceived. You still have time. To him, it's important that Christians be seen as generous and helpful. This is a chance to guide the wayward. People should come to Christ now. Someone informed me that I should forward this message to others, and that they would also receive notifications asking them to do the same. Afterwards, Mr. Shepard extended his hand and grasped mine. Someone told me to repent and rethink my priorities. In the midst of this event, I felt both connected to and disconnected from my purpose. I began to wonder if the church I was attending was the correct one. Both were exclaimed to be fine. Despite their differences, they are both routes that ultimately arrive at the same destination. I have been redirected multiple times by God, and He will do it again. Nevertheless, I fail to comprehend the far-reaching consequences of my decisions on those whom I am unaware of. The fact that I can't rally massive masses is no reason for me to feel diminished. It is my purpose to communicate with specific individuals whom no one else is interested in or able to contact. A degree or title is irrelevant. What matters is my heart. Everything you've ever wanted will be yours when your heart's desires meet God's. I was advised to simply participate, as this would set in motion a chain reaction of related occurrences that would guide me to my destiny. Someone informed me that my wife and I would be serving together. We are significantly stronger when we are joined. Our combined strength is comparable to the sum of 1 + 1 = 5. After that, he released my hand and informed me that God had spoken to me. My wife thought it was really wrong of me when I did the next thing. Yes, I did say it was the first time. Could I remain? I inquired. I didn't feel anxious or worried, even though he was telling me all this. The tone was entirely informal and unpretentious. The overwhelming sense of God's peace and love was nearly intoxicating. Returning to my anxious and fearful self was something I desperately wanted to avoid. Because of my despair, I did not want to go through periods when I felt distant from God. Time flows differently in that dimension. It seemed like it would be just a matter of days until I was back with Crystal, and I had this feeling. But they told me I couldn't accomplish my goals in their sphere, and they said they couldn't accomplish theirs either. While pointing me toward an opening in the pruned shrubs, Mr. Shepard assured me that he loved me. I was being rolled back into my room in my bed, the next thing I knew, and I felt completely numb. The removal procedure was successful, according to the nurse, but it took far longer than anticipated and encountered a few problems. I was going to inquire as to their whereabouts, but I had a feeling she wouldn't understand. If you've stuck with me until the very end, I am incredibly grateful. If you agree, please write Amen in the comments section to inform me. Kelly, we appreciate you telling us about your experience. Looking forward to seeing you in our upcoming video. Continue to be blessed.